What's up, guys? Today we're talking about the amazing digital circus movie. This thing has to be one of the most hyped, anticipated movies I can remember coming out in a long time. And for an indie company, no less, it really is crazy, taking the world by storm. Now, was it a good finale? I liked it, didn't love every second of it, but it was enjoyable. Not perfect, but it was a decent ride. For such a story like this, it's so big and crazy and grand in scale, kind of a complicated plot. It is tough to really tie a neat bow on it and wrap up a story like this of this scope, but just want to kick it off and say spoiler warning for anybody who hasn't seen it. Hop off now. Now, if you have seen it where you don't care about spoilers, this thing was fun. It was very kind of in balance though. I would say the pacing kind of was all over the place. It seemed super heavy relying on Jax as a character. I would have liked to see more of some other characters, even Pomni, who is the protagonist. She's there and gets the most screen time, but not necessarily the most development. So I have my gripes, but the animation and voice acting was beautiful as always. It looks really good, especially from the pilot. They really got a little higher budget. You could tell they're pouring their heart and soul into the animation and the voice acting. So that was fantastic. Like it's always been a real pleasure to look at. But definitely kind of a dark episode. There was maybe some humor. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really chuckle at all. I don't think it was meant to be funny. There were some jokes. They didn't really land for me personally, but definitely a more somber kind of feel to this closing finale. So I did the big things here. The big themes of the movie are closure and redemption. Those are the big main themes. Redemption mainly applies to Jax and Caine, and closure mainly applies to everybody else, the whole rest of the gang. So kicking it off, the movie starts with the narration by the fish in the theaters. That was kind of funny. I don't know if that'll be on YouTube. I feel maybe that's a theater exclusive thing, but and then a recap by Caine, basically recapping the pilot to present day. Not sure if anyone else enjoyed that, but the fish is always kind of funny. I did get a chuckle in the beginning. I think they knew it was a darker episode, so they try and open with some levity, but then we jump right into it. We pick off basically seconds after the last episode ends, and within the first few minutes, Kinger confirms the Soma theory, basically meaning that they are brain scans. I wasn't too surprised by this because Caine said that he had scanned their mind files, made a perfect digital copy of them. He basically confirmed that in the last episode. So not too shocking there, but it is cool to finally get the confirmation that they aren't real. There is no escape, because it would be like saying a Word document is escaping my laptop. Where's it going to go to? There's no physical, body to go to. So this is kind of quite the shock. I mean, it is quite the shock to them because they thought up until this point there were real human beings trapped there. Really what it turns out is they're a snapshot of a human brain at a certain point in time, and that's it. And they're basically a digital copy of that human brain. So that would make sense why when they zoom out in the pilot, the computer is empty, because Pomni put on the headset. Real life human Pomni, I think her name's Abigail. We'll get into that reveal. But the humans put on the headset, they think nothing happens, and they leave unaware that their brain is basically copied and put into a file in the amazing digital circus. So really kind of cool. Like I said before, not too surprising based on what Caine said last episode. But Jax responds by freaking out. He gets mad at Kinger for getting rid of Caine. He shoves him. It's kind of interesting to see Jax have some beef with Kinger because they don't really interact too much. Jax just kind of calls him crazy, but that's about it. But yeah, Jax is very mad at Kinger. He says that Ragatha can make up with her mom now, and Zubul could still make an impact on the world. And this is because obviously their real human selves are out in reality living their lives. And they're kind of just those brain scans trapped, kind of frozen in time. And Ragatha kind of said she's always the one who knew this. I think she said she'd always known deep down, but she didn't want to admit it, that there was no escape because this was the case. And we see all of our characters just, as you would be, shocked and stunned by this. They fall to their knees, they break down in tears, And while Pomni is upset, she's really the only one trying to cheer everyone up and hold them together. She's kind of the peacekeeper, the little engine that could, chugging along, trying to hold on to hope that their existence could still be meaningful. And Kinger's taking it pretty well too. I mean, Kinger is just a rock. He kind of knows what's going on. He's like, oh, well, he's the one that breaks the news to them. So he probably wasn't too surprised by this. Lucid Kinger basically knows everything. So everyone goes into their own corner of the circus for a while, and we have a little montage. Kinger teaches Pomni how to manifest objects into reality like Caine does, and it kind of reminds me of the Matrix a little bit. He's just teaching her how to conjure things up, and he mentions that she was quick to adapt and that she's something special, that he had seen people come into the circus and it takes some months to get used to it, but she was able to adapt and get used to everybody in just a couple days. And eventually we see the rest of the gang come out of the woodwork slowly through the montage. Kinger teaches them how to build things as well, and they all kind of join in together. Then we get a time jump, and it's revealed that Jax has abstracted. This was kind of a little bit jarring. I mean, we see it, I wasn't surprised that he abstracted. I guess I was surprised that it happened off screen. I was a little, caught off guard the way they chose to reveal that. After the time jump, you just see a abstracted creature scurrying around like an animal, and Pomni's kind of following it, and it's revealed that it's Jax. And we've seen that he's been on the brink of abstraction for I don't even know how many episodes. It's been a long time now. And obviously we had that one where he's kind of hallucinating. It's like a, crazy trip and all the colors and, but it would have been kind of interesting to see that transformation fully, like how that happens. But we just kind of cut and he is done. So that was a little interesting way they did that. But, he's suddenly just abstracted. We just kind of have to roll with it. Pomni says she regrets not reaching out, but in her defense, we've seen her try that again and again, and he just continued to push her away no matter what. So no matter what her and the rest would try and do, you see all of them, even, Ragatha, even Zubul that doesn't really like him. They all try to extend the hand, but he just slaps it down every single time. So Pomni's plan at this point is basically just to restrain the abstracted Jax and try and see what they could do with him. It's almost like trying to keep if you had a loved one that turned into like a tiger or a zombie or some kind of feral monster, it's like, oh, well, let's just build some kind of cage for them or something. Especially because in the digital world, you can't really get rid of them. So I think you just kind of have to, roll with it, I guess. But now that Caine's gone, they can't just throw him into the cellar like they had done previously. But this is where we get to my only real complaint with the finale. So Pomni uses one of the pistols from the earlier episodes to shoot out the lights, since Kinger told her that abstracted people get calm and pacified in the dark. And then she embraces the abstracted Jax. She sort of hugs him and then jumps into him, which is kind of weird. Kind of comes out of nowhere. She's basically inside Jax's mind by physically going inside his abstracted body. I get it. They wanted to give this kind of deep dive into his head, and I don't know how else they would have done that, but it just seemed a little bit weird to me because she didn't know she could do this. So she just kind of like jumped into him and then hoped for the best, I guess. Kind of comes out of nowhere. But since she gets into Jax's mind, we get some sequences with some alternate realities. These are kind of like alternate versions of Jax. Some were the rest of the gang abstracted. We have one that's kind of wacky and fun, and just a whole different bunch of Jaxes. This was kind of loony and wacky, and you get to see all of the alternate Jaxes, but kind of felt like filler, in my opinion. Didn't really advance the plot all that much. When we get to the final and real Jax, it kind of advances the plot, but the 5 or 6 other random Jaxes, not really needed, I guess. We get the Psycho Jax we see in the trailer. He tries choking Pomni out in a universe where Ragatha abstracted. We get to see Jax in the French maid outfit again, who's really into Gangle for some reason. That's kind of interesting. Then we see a nice guy version of Jax. We see a Looney Tunes version of Jax. All these kind of different things. I get what they're trying to do. They're all different parts of his personality. It's kind of like, if you remember the old Teen Titans episode where they have like the 5 different Ravens that come out, the fastest of her personality, but this went on for quite a bit. I was kind of like, okay, when are you gonna move the plot forward? We get all these wacky sequences with the random Jaxes. They just kind of felt like they were, not really going anywhere, but a little bit long for my taste. Like I said, I like Jax, but they dedicated a crazy amount of screen time to him here. I wanted to see the whole gang. I wanted to see more of other characters. I feel like he took up a solid 70% of the movie, just all about him. So finally, we get to the real interesting stuff with Jax, his friendship with Kaufmo and Ribbit. This is what we've been waiting for. I was kind of like finally when they got to this part. So we see it first when they come in. They're all good pals. They're thick as thieves. And he gets really close with Ribbit, almost too close, and that's what sours things with all of them. They're kind of that trio. So Jax tells Ribbit his whole backstory. He had a bad home life. His parents fought a lot. He got a lot of his toxic masculinity traits from his dad. His dad was around, but he wasn't around. And then his dad left. He had a big fight with his mom. She dug into him. She really tore him apart hard. And then she hugged him after. And he was upset and confused by this. So he pushed her away. She fell to the floor and she didn't get up. At which point he panics. He runs away. Again, mind you, just an important detail. This is in the real world. This is real world Jax, human Jax that this happens with before he enters the circus. So he had the bad home life, fights with his mom, pushes her over because he's upset, doesn't get up, basically thinks that he led to the demise of his own mother, so that's a little messed up. And he gets in the car and drives away. That's where we see the clip on the road. In the real world, it had nothing to do with, him hurting a kid or anything like that. It was basically him just driving out of his house, of his neighborhood. He was just running away. Then we see a clip of him kind of a real human arm. He's sleeping on the street. He mentions that he's being homeless for a little bit at this time. And it's not shown or stated by Jax, but it's eventually assumed that after this happens with his mom and he runs away, somehow he gets to the CNA lab. He finds the headset, he puts it on, and then poof, that's the Jax we all know. So basically, very long-winded way of saying this is why he's a jerk, because he came from this horrible, tragic point of his life, and that's a brain that was scanned. So that's the Jax we know in the circus. And that's interesting because if this was a better, well-adjusted Jax, if it was years earlier or years later, maybe he's a little older, he has a girlfriend, he has a job, he has friends, he's happy, he has a relationship with his parents that's good, and that Jax got his brain scanned, maybe he wouldn't be such a jerk. Maybe he'd be a nicer guy because, it's kind of finding him where he is at that point of his life, which is not a good point. So pretty much that's Jax's backstory. This is pretty wild, obviously, because the digital Jax has no idea if his mom survived or not. Pretty crazy. That's why he pushes people away and feels guilty. He doesn't even know the fate of his own mother, and he doesn't say, I feel bad, I feel terrible about it. What kind of son am I? How could I do that? Maybe he says that. I don't really remember, but it's pretty much implied that he feels bad because of what happened with his mom. Who wouldn't feel terrible about that? My gosh, that's awful. So up until this point, one part I want to note is they're sitting on a bed. We're in Ribbit's room. There's like stars around her room. Her room's like a big, the bed's like a lily pad, and it's very romantic. It's a romantic kind of setting. They're sitting close to each other. They're kind of touching hands or blushing. It's a very romantic kind of vibe, and you can tell they like each other. It's awkward, and they're kind of cute, and a lot of people that would say that, oh, Jax and Pomni are a thing. I don't think they ever really were. I think they were just really good friends for a little bit there, but Jax and Ribbit, they're really pushing the fact that they like each other, and that also makes them uncomfortable and flustered. So then basically Kaufmo knocks on the door, and this is right after Jax dumped his whole crazy, tragic backstory on Ribbit, and Jax jumps up, he gets all flustered, he looks around, he's like, oh, sorry, I'm an idiot, I shouldn't have told you that, I gotta go, and he runs out the door. He's telling himself, he's like, oh man, you messed that up, what'd you do? And he feels so awkward about oversharing with her when he was getting to like her, that basically every time she says hi to him and he sees her in the circus after this, he ignores her. So she would have a lot of clips and montages of saying, oh, hi Jax, want to partner up for this adventure? And he goes, oh no, I'm good, I'm going to partner with Kaufmo. And then she'd go, "Hi, Jax, want to talk?" And he'd go, "No, get out of here. What are you doing?" He'd just start deflecting, start ignoring her, start being a jerk. And basically it kind of culminates in the snow adventure where she kind of comes to him. She's like, "Please, I'm sorry. Can we talk? I miss being your friend." And he basically just tells her off, tells her to get out. He doesn't care. He just is a big jerk to her. So that's kind of it. Basically pushes her away because he regretted oversharing all his family stuff, the stuff with his mom. She even mentioned that she was like, "Oh, well, she probably got up. She probably was fine, because if she wasn't, the cops would be after you in the real world for for committing a crime." And that also really upsets and flusters him, because he doesn't know what's going on in the real world, I guess. He thinks he's like trapped in the game at this point. So basically Jax, after he overshares his background, pushes away Ribbit, which in the long run after the montage leads to her abstraction. Later, this same thing happens with Kaufmo. He just starts ignoring and blowing him off, and then we see him talking about finding an exit, and then obviously we know what happens next there with Kaufmo. But this was sad to see, especially since they try to mend things. Ribbit really tries, but Jax shoots down every single attempt she makes. It's kind of sad to watch. But from there, Pomni reunites with what looks like the real Jax, and kind of weird. He's just sort of standing there. He's by a streetlight. So I guess when you abstract, you just relive all these negative memories on loop. That sounds pretty bad, but it isn't really made 100% clear what the real Jax does at that point. I guess he just kind of stands there and exists in the mind of his abstracted body. But after sharing a heart-to-heart with Pomni, he finally, he's upset. He's like, "You're not supposed to care about me. I'm a jerk. Get away," And we're supposed to feel bad for Jax. Oh, he doesn't know how to let people care about him. And basically Pomni gives him a big hug. He finally hugs her back. And that's I'm not going to lie, it's kind of nice to see, because every other time Pomni would try and hug him, he'd just get mad and push her off. But he finally hugs her back, and they both cry. I don't know if I mentioned that. There's a lot of crying in this, like a lot. They just hug, they cry, they hug, they cry. And seriously, you drink every time somebody cries in this finale, you'll be spinning in no time. But anyway, not a big deal. It's just something I noticed happens a lot. I guess it kind of makes sense given the the feel of the finale, but it's a bit ironic. He finally stops pushing people away once he's abstracted, and Jax even admits he did it to himself. He has no one else to blame. And at this point, we see in the real abstracted, outside of Jax's mind, we see Pomni's body that begins glitching out, as they've established in the pilot when Kaufmo is touching Ragatha. If you contact an abstracted individual, it causes you to abstract as well. So Pomni's glitching out because she's still there, hugging the abstracted Jax. And basically the gang take a chain of Zubal's extra arms to kind of make a lasso, and they grab her and pull her out to safety. And that's when we all see, that's pretty much all we see from Jax for the rest of the film. At least digital Jax, that is. And I say digital Jax from real Jax because we see that distinction at the very end of the finale. But yeah, Jax stays abstracted. He never gets turned back. I was kind of waiting for Pomni's hug and the power of friendship to pull him out of it. But no, never happens. He's stuck that way. So that kind of not a happy ending for digital Jax. But after the gang makes a pillow for it to comfort monster Jax, the abstracted Jax, we get a big reveal. Caine's still alive. This was kind of shocking. They didn't delete him. They basically just banished him to the void. I found that kind of funny. I guess Caine is like undeletable. Now here's a weird detail with that. We see it cuts to Caine in the void, and there's a bubble next to him. Just a random bubble. But it has no eyes. It has no mouth. It's like Bubble's just gone. And he's not seen for the rest of the finale. I think he shows up in some flashbacks, but there is no Bubble, which is kind of weird because I guess Caine and Bubble were linked. Caine gets deleted. Caine's alive, but he's in the void. But it's like, what happened to Bubble? So kind of weird. He just shows up, disappears with literally no explanation. And Bubble's kind of whole thing is what pushed Caine to madness and snapping at everybody in the last episode. So kind of an important character. His huge catalyst in the penultimate episode, and then in the finale, just nowhere to be seen. Kind of odd. But anyway, Caine's aware that they tried to delete him though. And he's quite hurt by this. This kind of is the point where he finally sees the error of his ways. He admits he's gone too far. He has a total 360. He just turns around, 180 rather. And we see he reaches into his head and he pulls out the other AI that he took over in the beginning of the last episode, and he lets it go. It just kind of floats off into the void. No idea where it goes. I think the void is just emptiness and nothingness, but it just floats off. And we never see it again. And they never mention that. So that, again, I mean, that would have been kind of cool if it popped in and manifested a character like Caine. But we literally see no mention of that other AI at all. And now that he separated the other AI, the other little, blue and red that combined to make Caine dots, Caine mentions later that he's not as powerful as he was originally because he's only one AI and not the two combined anymore. So that's 50% of a Caine floating around in the void somewhere, but we just never see it. So again, seems like another missed opportunity on their end to expand on that. But Caine then zips through the void to what seems like the edge of the map, and it's basically just a wall. And at this point, he creates a bunch of platforms. He walks up. There's a bunch of barriers. He breaks through. And visually, this looked really cool. It did go on for quite a while. I was kind of like, okay, Caine, just get to where you're trying to go. But it goes on for a while. There's some cool music. It's kind of slow. It looks cool. When Caine finishes breaking through all the walls, I kind of see this as him breaking through different firewalls and, internal computer software, stuff like that. So we get a big reveal waiting for him when he breaks through all these firewalls. Caine accesses the mind files, and we see within them everybody's names. So we see all the gang. We see the real life human names. And Caine had hidden this feature intentionally, I think. And I think he did this so that when the people came in, basically they were a blank slate. They didn't have their old identities. They don't know, oh, I'm Abigail, I'm an accountant, I'm this. They were just basically, oh, you get a new name, you're Pomni now. And then it was kind of easier for him to mold them in how he wanted them to be. But after he realized that the humans tried to take him out, he realized that they deserve free will, and that's part of what he likes about them. And from now, he's basically going to approach things differently when he goes back to the circus. Basically let them run the show. They'll be running the show. And Caine will be there just to help. He's not going to force them to do anything they don't want to. He's not going to hurt them. He's basically going to be like, hey guys, keys to the kingdom are yours. Do what you want. I'm here if you need me later. So totally different style Caine's going to be doing now. And he unlocks all this info again so they remember their names. And he returns to the circus where the moon says she loves him. This was a nice kind of callback to the pilot. Let's leave before the moon gets frisky. That was kind of sweet. And Caine finds it odd. He tells the moon, I never programmed you to say that. And she goes, I know, which is kind of sweet. And this shows that, the AI have their own personalities, just like we've seen the NPCs. They're NPCs and computers. I'm assuming the moon's an NPC, but they still have their own unique personalities. Kind of cool. But Caine gets back to the gang. They're ready to fight. They're on guard. They're like, oh boy, what is he doing back? And he apologizes for all he put them through. He basically let them know they could do whatever they want now. The circus is theirs. They could free roam. They could explore. They could open world, build what they want, anything they could think of. And he doesn't react too much. Jack's being abstracted. He's just like, oh, whoopsies. You want my help with that? It's kind of Caine's fault too, because, when Caine went crazy on them and then they deleted Caine, and then Jax was upset. That's kind of what led him to abstract. Granted, he was on the brink of that long before that, but yeah, Caine probably didn't help. But anyway, so it's basically the same as before, except no adventures. They have total freedom within the digital circus now. And the main difference comes at the very end, though, which is the revelation and the closure that the characters get. So Caine basically unlocks all their social media accounts and presents it to them in a slideshow. Kind of a creative way. I get why they did it this way. You wanted to show the human world, but how could you look at the human world if you're stuck in a video game? Easy. You access the internet somehow and you pull up their social media so you could see their real life human counterparts. And bad luck if one of them wasn't on social media, then I guess they'd have no way of knowing what was going on. But I guess pretty much everybody in 2026 is on some form of social media, so there you go. And this one's kind of an emotional moment at the end. The characters watch themselves. It's a little surreal, it's almost like your out of body experience from heaven watching, watching over loved ones back on earth, And they get a lot of solace and a sense of comfort watching the real life, present day selves, and they're all thriving in the real world. And it's kind of crazy seeing all their real names and real life images in the show. Obviously, this is what we were hoping for. You wanted to put a name to the face and see the real identities and people behind these characters, but we finally get that in the end. So that's kind of cool. Like I said before, it's kind of a slideshow. We get a little time on each character, and when I say a little, it's literally like a few seconds and a few pictures per character. And in the slideshow, we get their names and what they're up to. I think Pomni narrates it for some reason. I feel like Caine should be narrating it. I don't know, but yeah. So Pomni's still an accountant who does urban exploring with her friends. Ragatha is successful in real estate. Gangle quit her job at fast food. She makes comics. I think they also mentioned Gangle had some kind of injury, which would kind of explain why, she's kind of meek with the ribbons, because if she has a physical problem, that's kind of a new lore detail we get for Gangle. Zubul opens up a successful bar. That's kind of a nice callback to the bartending bit. And Kinger is happy with his wife and kids, which is really sweet. I mean, obviously Kinger was very upset about losing Queenie, but in the real world, he is happy with his wife. They're together. They have a family. That's a nice ending for Kinger. And finally, Jax, he's no longer homeless. He works as a delivery guy. You see him kind of joking around, waving to some guy he drops a package off to. And that's about it. And one thing that is worth noting is you see these characters, but the shot, they have something covering their face, so you don't fully see them. Or it's a wide shot, they have something covering it up. But a cool little detail is that they mention that Jax and his friends often drink and they hang out at Zubul's bar. So he's crossing over with her, even though in the Macroverse, in the real world, none of these guys have ever really met. They don't really know each other. But they would be in and around the same town because obviously all of them have to put the headset on. So most of them would be from the same general area, 30 to 50 mile radius, because they all happen to stumble upon the CNA office. But the fate of Jax's mom isn't specifically stated, but given the fact that he's not in jail, I'd guess she's still doing okay. And hopefully he made up with her. Again, they don't really state that, but I would wish that for Jax. Anyway, what's sad is that while Digital King gets these life updates, all of them get the life updates and see their real selves, but abstracted Digital Jax never does, because he is basically trapped in the abstraction form. So he's basically still left guessing perpetually what happened with his mom, which again, basically everybody else gets a happy ending here, but the guys that abstracted, not so much. So I was waiting for King to swoop in and fix them, but he never does. Now, could he have done it before? I feel like King never could fix an abstracted person because he wants more humans there. So if he could, he would. But he never could. So the best he could do is, try and put them somewhere. But Caine, this is kind of a cool bit at the very end. We hear Caine call Pomni by her real human name, which is Abigail. And Pomni kind of embraces with the gang and says, you know what? I finally accept my new identity. She says the real Abigail is out there living her best life, but in here she's Pomni and she's okay with that. So again, acceptance. They've kind of made peace with what they are and what it is. And now they're gonna make the best of it. And it's kind of funny, they don't have to have jobs, they don't have to pay taxes. So there's some things, it's got its perks, I guess. They miss their family and loved ones, but having access to their social media, they could see that in the other world, in the Macroverse, in reality, they're all doing well and their real selves are with their family. So it's a different kind of existence for sure, but they're making the best of what they have. So finally, we get a montage of everybody. They're having fun. We see them paint a mural of everyone who's abstracted. We see them playing board games, and Gangle is drawing and she's showing Caine the pictures. We see Zubal's bartending. She makes Caine a drink. They're all hanging out, having fun. And of course, we end on a dinner scene, just like the opening to the pilot, except this time everyone's happy. Jax isn't there, obviously, but everyone's happy. And it's kind of a nice full circle moment. You see Pomni about to lose her mind, and now Pomni genuinely smiling, hanging out with the gang. One other thing too, they make the abstracted people like an aquarium, and they're kind of swimming around like whales. So that's, kind of sweet. They're trying to do something with them rather than just, run away from them, I guess. But ironically, it was a mystery that was causing all the issues. I feel like if Caine had just let them know what they were from the jump, they would have found peace like this sooner. But by hiding this information all this time, it kind of drove them crazy. Now that they know what's going on and what they are and that their real selves are doing okay, they're kind of like, okay, I could roll with this. I get it. So Caine telling the truth was basically what set them free and gave them their, closure and ability to actually enjoy the circus. Not literally, but metaphorically, the truth set them free in this case. But now that they know they're alive in the macroverse, they can kind of enjoy the digital world for what it is, make the best of it. And in the very last scene, we finally get a full look at the main cast as humans. I think this was like after a couple credits. And earlier, their faces were obstructed, but here we get the full look at them, and they're all meeting outside a bus stop together. At this point, they're strangers, just all happen to be gathered around the bus stop. They all get on the same bus, it drives off, and that's the end. And they kind of cross over in another world without even realizing it. So kind of cool. It was weird to see that Pomni was the tallest, like out of the other gang, because her digital self is kind of tiny, but it would have been cool to see some more characters, maybe the real life Kaufmo or Ribbit, but we never do. It makes sense because, they weren't in the show that much, but would have been kind of neat. But this begs the question, will new people continue to come into the circus? We don't really get an answer on that. It's not explicitly stated, but I would assume so. I guess the circus will continue basically until someone demolishes CNA and all their computers are destroyed, at which point everything would be gone and offline. But that's about it. I mean, also, I feel like another kind of missed opportunity would just be CNA, the company itself. I get that it's supposed to be mysterious, but you really don't get very much. I mean, Scratch gets like a 2-second appearance. He's kind of the genius behind all this that Kinger worked with. He had a brain tumor. He wanted to, live in another world, but we really don't get anything from him. I don't even think Scratch barely has any voice lines. So it would have been cool to see a little bit more with him. I get it. They already have a lot of characters, but kind of seems like they could have done a little more with that. But closing thoughts, the Jax mind thing with all the alternate versions seemed a bit drawn out. It was kind of weird that he abstracted off screen, and Digital Jax definitely got a bad ending, but they usually say show and don't tell in storytelling, but he literally sits on the bed with Rivet and just dumps out his entire backstory verbally. We get a couple flashes, but would have been kind of cool to get him, experience that without him just talking the whole time. But I get it. They did it that way because they want to limit the footage in the real world. But I wasn't really the biggest fan of how he basically just sits and just talks his whole backstory out. But, he's a cool character, but it seemed like the attention of Jax dominated, like I said before, like a big percentage of the film, of the finale. And Caine, on the other hand, he had a really cool redemption arc, but it seemed kind of rushed. It would have been cool to see it a little more gradually, but he basically just, once they delete him, he's like, oh, I'm totally good now. I messed up. I'm going to do the complete opposite. So, yeah, definitely would have been more to see more time with Caine. He's one of my favorites, and I feel like he got kind of shafted. He didn't really get that much screen time, I would say. So that's about it. Oh, yeah, and then the last thing I would say is no bubble, no explanation at all, just gone, and only appears in flashback. So that was a little weird, but that's about it. The Jax being evil thing on the posters was a bit misleading. I think they just made a bait and switch or thought it made for cool marketing, but we really only got a few minutes, maybe less, of Crazy Jax. and that wasn't even him. That was just a sequence all in his head. So all in all, good finale. Not amazing, not bad, but good. And it's always hard to write a good ending, especially with a complicated premise like this. And they spent so much time on it. So you gotta give the hats off to the voice actors and animators. But I think they also kind of spell out the theme a lot of times that kind of hits you over the head with it. Life's about the people you connect with. Life is what you make of it. Enjoy the little things, all that. And it's a good theme, but they kind of repeat it a lot throughout the story. So in the end, it kind of loses a little bit of its subtlety. And they hug and cry a lot. But, that's about it. Just things I noticed. What do you guys think? Those are my thoughts. Fun ride. Maybe a little less Jax, a little more Caine, maybe a little more CNA stuff. That's about it. What do you guys think? Comment down below. And don't forget to tune in next time.